Hi, Magic is Real listeners. This is Shannon Torrance. Today, my guest is Jen Dean. When Jen was a teenager, she was diagnosed with leukemia. After having a toxic reaction to chemotherapy, she had a near-death experience, and today she's going to tell us all about it and how it informed her spiritual path going forward. Jen and I hope that you enjoy this interview, and if you do, it would really mean the world if you could take the time to leave a positive review, share with like-minded friends, like, and subscribe. Thank you so much for your support. It helps me to continue doing what I'm doing and to get the word out there that this is not all there is. Thank you so much, and here's my interview with Jen Dean. Hello, Magic is Real listeners. Today, I have with me the lovely Jen Dean. She is a near-death experiencer and a human being with a lot of insight to share. So I'm really excited to have her today. And thank you for listening and or watching. Jen, how are you today? Thank you so
I'm
much for
doing
joining
great.
me. Good.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
I am so happy to have you on. First of all, Jen, I like people to get to know you. I like to get to know you. I'd love to know what it is that I kind of say do, but what's your life like? What do you do? What's your job? What's your career? And just generally, who are you as a human being?
Okay, so I am a pediatric Reiki nurse, and I'm also a master teacher of Reiki. So I usually work pediatric home health, and then I have my Mystical Mama business, which is the Reiki business where I teach and I do Reiki sessions. So that's my career. And I'm trying to, help to kind of get Reiki into the medical field a little more because Reiki nurses are popping up all over. We're seeing great results from Reiki in the medical field. So I'm excited to be a part of that, evolution, a little bit of medicine. And also, I am the mother to my 4.5-year-old miracle baby, Declan. So he's my little best friend. I had cancer. I'm a pediatric cancer survivor. I had leukemia when I was 13 years old. And my near death experience actually happened due to an adverse reaction to the chemotherapy. And so ultimately, I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to have a child. So when I got pregnant naturally with my son, it was my dream come true. So basically, being a mother is my heaven on earth. And I just embrace every day like it's my last because I'm a cancer survivor. Like I realize that you never know if you have tomorrow. So ultimately, I just try to embrace every day. And with my Mystical Mama page, I bring everybody along on the journey. I share, anything that's, energy updates or anything that people can do with the energy. So that's my calling now. I've shifted more into, the energy healer role, but being a mother has been the best experience of my existence. So that is mainly what I am.
Oh,
I am a
love
mother,
that.
and my little Declan, just he is hilarious. Like he's better than anything I could have ever imagined. So I just enjoy the journey with him.
That's beautiful. So that's why when I say, what do you do? I don't like to say that because I kind of want to know who you are and what's important to you and what matters to you and what your life looks like and that's such a beautiful thing to hear. And
Thank you.
so you did mention that you had cancer. You were a pediatric cancer patient and survivor. So this actually leads us to your near-death experience. You can
Right.
start wherever you want because I know that the timeline isn't a straight path. I would like to know also how, as a child, did you have any concept of spirituality or how were you raised in terms of spirituality, religion before the near death experience? So what did your life look like before your diagnosis?
Before my diagnosis, so I come from a very Irish Catholic family. And so, we went to church. We loosely, it was like, around the holidays and whatnot. But right before I got sick, my family had joined like a church group. And when I got sick I was diagnosed with leukemia, I had a lot of like prayer chains going and whatnot. And so, we were a part of the church, my family, and I do believe in the power of prayer because I have a lot of people praying for me. I do actually totally believe in that. But after my near death experience, my family never really went back to church. Like they saw a miracle happen in front of their eyes, and like it kind of changed us all to just know that God is always with us. We don't have to be in a church to feel that. You know, they saw it for themselves. God was in that hospital room at my bedside with me and with all of us. So, after my near death experience, I still had some time to go with cancer treatments and whatnot, but and we were still, I guess the church group was still there for us, and we were with them, but I don't remember ever going back to church
Right.
much. Maybe occasionally, but I feel it just changed my whole family, not just me. My dad was he was in the army. I was born in Fort Knox. So it's they lived all over the world, my parents. So, a military family, like my dad, he was out of the army by the time, I think around the time I was born, he was out. But we still moved a lot. So we lived in Kansas when I got diagnosed with cancer. Um, and we went to a children's hospital there, and it was amazing. I mean, like they're very holistic out in Kansas. So the way that they would approach my treatments was very mind body incorporated, right? Like even this is a little it's like an idea of how they worked. These doctors were amazing. And then we ended up moving back to New Jersey, and I went to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia after. But the beginning, we lived in Kansas. When I got diagnosed, the portacath that I had to get the cancer treatments through, I was 13 years old. So the doctors told me they were going to put the portacath below my breast so that after I got through all of my treatments, when I went to school dances, I could wear a strapless dress and not show any scars, because they usually put it up here.
Mhm.
That's typically where portacaths are put. So they did this. I mean, naturally, I ended up with an infection and spiked like 107 fever.
Wow.
I had no immune system, and I got an infection. Then they had to take it out, and they put the other one over here. So I had two scars. But when those doctors said that to me, and they said, this way you can wear a strapless dress to your school dances and stuff. In my 13-year-old mind, I said, well, if they can see me there, then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And sure enough, for my prom, my senior prom, I wore a beautiful strapless dress.
Aw.
And it was like, just, that was the vision they had, and I manifested it. I'm a pediatric nurse and like a pediatric cancer survivor. So I've been in this game for a long time between being a patient and a nurse. And I can tell you that the approach to pediatrics, to children, is so much different than adults. You really incorporate their mind into it, because kids, you want them to build their imagination. I mean, even down to the point of there are pain management techniques that pediatrics uses with hypnotherapy. I don't know how much they use that in adult medicine. So before I had my near death experience, it really did help me to kind of just get that started of really understanding mind, body, and spirit, because it was all connected. Like it was all in pediatrics, and I was in palliative care, right? So in palliative care, they kind of help you embrace life, but they also help you to accept death, because ultimately, if you're in palliative care, you are close to dying.
Right.
So I was in palliative care for like 3 years, because I got diagnosed in 1995. They told my parents that they knew more about leukemia in cats than in humans.
Oh, wow.
Most of the treatments were very experimental, and my parents told straight up, it's a 50-50 shot. It's either gonna help her or kill her. Like, they didn't beat around the bush back then.
Yeah.
So, uh, it really, the approach though is what fascinates me. And maybe because I was in palliative care.
Yeah.
So when I had my near death experience, it's like being in palliative care helped me to embrace it even more.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I
Right.
wasn't talked out of anything. I don't think I even brought it up. Honestly, afterwards, I didn't think anything of it. I just
Yeah.
was so young. But yeah, I'll go into the near death experience, but it's an interesting difference, especially working in pediatrics now. Um, I just try to bring forth all the amazing, work that was done with me.
Right.
Like, I learned from the best. I learned from my nurses and doctors. Ultimately, even that little child inside of me wants to make my doctors proud. Like, it's
Right.
funny because I was, for 3 years, all my doctors they were like family. So, um,
And I
you know,
assume that's what drew you to the profession.
absolutely. And my family too. My grandmother was a nurse. My mom's a home health aide, so kind of stayed in that medical field. Um, but yeah, I mean, I learned so much because at the age I was old enough to understand what was happening.
Yeah.
With that came a little bit of trauma because I would hear like kids crying and little babies, and like I knew what they were going through, but they didn't know, So it was, but with that, I felt like I always wanted to be a nurse, just
Right.
like the nurses I had, like
Yeah.
they inspired me, and I felt like I learned so much from that journey, and I basically went into palliative care. Like, the pediatric patients I have, most of them are end of life. It's basically keeping them comfortable until
Yeah.
their time comes. So it really helped me to be able to help the families, to be able to help my patients, um, because I watched and learned from the best.
Yeah.
Like I said, that my doctors were amazing. The treatments were very rough,
Mm-hmm.
but I was always heard by my doctors. They never dismissed my concerns.
Mm-hmm.
That is something, unfortunately, sometimes happens in the adult world of medicine.
Yeah.
You get dismissed, and it's just interesting.
Right.
But the palliative care approach includes spirit, mind, body, and spirit, because
Yeah.
ultimately you're preparing a person to die, to be okay with dying, to know that it's not going to hurt. It's a shift. Like,
Right.
so that prep leading into my NDE was like, if that wasn't all arranged, that I don't know what was.
That's what I meant to. That's what I'd like to ask you about. Is so I would like to go to the day of your near death experience. But with I would like to go into the day of your near death experience, but to understand the frame of mind you were in when it happened. Were you in a place of fear at that time? Did you think you might die? What were your feelings? And then you can lead us into what happened.
Okay, so the day of, I was supposed to go down. I had already been in the hospital for months at this point. Like, I was diagnosed at 13 years old. So the NDE happened about, I would say, 8 months into my treatments. I was getting spinal taps with intrathecal chemotherapy, which is in the spinal fluid, because leukemia is cancer. So like, just to give a background,
Yeah.
leukemia is cancer of the blood. So the cancer cells can get through to the brain via blood-brain barrier. There could be a mixture, and the cancer cells can get to the brain. So part of treatment for leukemia is chemotherapy in the spinal fluid to kill any cancer cells that might get to the brain. Well, on top of that, you get radiation to the brain. So I had been in the hospital for months at this point, and this was Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And I remember I had a room facing inside. So the only thing I could see was the atrium. I had no outside window. So I've been months and just in this hospital room, like no even natural light. It was kind of rough. So when they said, oh, you're going to go down for your first radiation treatment to your brain. So my mom came with me. I was kind of like, yay, I get to go for a ride, you know, in the wheelchair through the hospital. So we stopped at the gift shop. I got some candy. They tattooed me for this because it's got to be the exact spot every time for radiation, because whatever it touches is going to kill. So, you know, you got to be very precise. So I actually still have tattoos on my face. Like they just put a black mark to keep it precise, just to throw that in there. So we're going down. I wasn't scared or anything. I was kind of excited because we had to go outside to the University of Pennsylvania Hospital Radiology Center, which was right next door to CHOP. So, you know, the transporter or whatever nurse brought me outside to go around to this side of the building and go in the place we had to go. And I remember it was summertime. It was July. So of 1996. And I remember they wheeled me out, just the feeling of the sun hitting my face, the smells, the sounds. It was great. I felt like I just really took it in, which we're looking back, it was like, yeah, because I was about to have a massive experience. And it really, I felt it all. And I hadn't been outside in months, you know, so it felt amazing. And then I got up to the radiology center and sat there with my mom, and they had asked me to take out my earrings. So I went in the bathroom to take out my earrings, and I'm looking in the mirror at myself as I'm taking out these earrings, and it just felt weird. Like I'm staring at myself, and it just felt like, I don't know, it felt weird, like something was coming. So I took out my earrings, sat back down in the wheelchair, and I'm eating my candy. My mom's sitting with me. I'm the next patient to go in for my first round of radiation to my brain. And all of a sudden I couldn't hold my head up. Like my head got heavy, and I'm like, to my left side, it kept falling. And as soon as I started, what is going on? My left arm went out. And then my left leg went out. I couldn't lift anything on my left side. And I turned to my mom and I said, Mom, something's wrong. I don't feel good. And she had been a home health aide for years. And so she said my mouth was drooping, and she immediately said, oh, you're stroking out. She ran, got the nurse. They rushed me back to my room, which is all a blur. The next thing I remember is sitting in my hospital bed. My left side was still out. I could speak, but it was slurred, like somebody who had a stroke. My doctor came running in, and the look on his face was fear. This guy, he had no clue what he was looking at. He looked so scared. It prompted me to ask him, am I going to die? Because like, he just looked so scared. You don't want your doctor looking scared. So I was like, am I going to die? And he looked at me and said, I don't know. So at that point, I just kind of stared off in space, and whatever came next came next. I kind of accepted it. Well, then this is my time, you know? And shortly after that, my left side started to come back, interestingly enough. And the doctors didn't really know what was going on with me, because remember, most of this was experimental still. So they didn't really know what was going to happen. These type of treatments were new in the 90s. So my left side came back, and my doctor came up and said, you know, you really dodged a bullet, because had you gone in to get the radiation, it would have burned the chemotherapy that we're putting in your spine that's going around. That is what caused the issue. The chemotherapy was attacking my brain. So the doctor was like, you would never have come out of that. It would have burned the chemo into your brain. So right there, I said to myself, something just saved me. Something just saved, like that timing was too perfect. Yeah. The divine timing of my left side going out. I was the next patient to go in. If that happened while I was in there getting the radiation, I would never have come out of that.
Right.
So the doctor gave me the okay to start eating again, because like you have to have a gag reflex to eat or you choke. And if you have a stroke, you could have your throat is not working properly. So they did a test. They said, you're okay, you can eat. Um, and we just took it as like, wow, we dodged a bullet. We don't even know really what happened. So then I'm sitting there shortly after, eating my lunch, watching Stand By Me with my dad, and he's sitting, by the window eating too. And I go to swallow a carrot and I almost choked and I coughed it up. My dad looked at me quickly and I thought I said, or I said in my head at least, it's happening again. But my dad said my eyes were filled with tears and I was shaking in my voice. It was like mumbling, but I said, it's happening again. And then I was out. So the chemo was not done attacking my brain yet. So it threw me into a deep vegetative state. I was fully aware, but trapped in my body. I could not use my body. I could not communicate. I was in decorticate posturing. It was a massive brain injury. I actually still have this arm. I had a contracture, so I had to have a surgery to pull it straight. And this arm doesn't even straighten because I have contractures from what happened still to this day. The next thing I remember from that point was they brought me to do an MRI. And because they needed to know what is going on, they didn't know what was going on. So they brought me in to do an MRI, put me in the MRI machine, and they put headphones on because it's a loud banging and it's like an hour long. Yeah. But when they put the headphones on me, there was static coming through. And here I am, I couldn't communicate to tell them, I'm listening to static and I have a brain injury. It was driving me crazy. So my whole body, I was like this. I couldn't move. I couldn't, use my body or my voice or anything. And my dad was in the room with me when I was getting the MRI. And he's sitting there and I kept saying to myself, move your feet, move your feet, move your feet. And I got my foot to wiggle. Thank God my dad saw it. He jumped up. He said he saw tears running down my face. So he jumped up, literally started pulling me out of the machine. So everybody came in, they stopped, they sat me up. They brought me a dry erase board and a marker to communicate because they knew I had something to say. I couldn't say it. And because my hands were clawed up and I couldn't use them, I couldn't hold the marker to write. And I dropped it and I just started crying. And that's when I didn't even stop crying. I think I just said, this is crazy. This is my life now. This is going to be my life. I'm going to be trapped, fully aware in my body. And I can't even get my most basic needs met. Like I have an itch to scratch. Nobody can do it. I can't do it. It's crazy. So I started just crying. And my parents said, all I would do is cry. If I was awake and aware, I would just cry and cry. And I had to have a spinal tap, which was done without sedation because they would not sedate me because they didn't know what was going on, where I even was. So like they can't put me under more with sedation or pain meds. So I had to get a spinal tap done without sedation, where I usually was sedated for that. I can remember the feeling of getting the spinal tap. My dad was watching me. He said I was just crying the whole time. Just tears, so the doctors figured out they called it leukodystrophy. I was the 8th case in the country or the world, I'm not really sure at that point, and they found this out through going on the intranet to other hospitals. Like they didn't have the internet back then. So the intranet, they found out that this was a severe adverse reaction to the chemotherapy in my spinal taps. And I was the 8th kid to have it, but the other ones did not wake up. The other ones stayed either in a vegetative state or they died. So they told my doctors, just prepare their parents. Like she's either never coming out of it or she's going to die. So that's what they told my parents. And they basically were like, she honestly be better off dead. Because to be trapped in your body is way worse than that, which, Yeah, like they didn't really beat around the bush, but whatever, straightforward. I think they were kind of freaking out too. I think the doctors were a little bit like shook, that they never had this happen. So back then they called it leukodystrophy. Now it's got a bigger term because they've done more research. It's happened more. I'm probably part of that research, but it's called methotrexate induced leukoencephalopathy. So after I remember briefly waking up, I see my arms like this. I wasn't really aware of my body. It was odd. It was like my mind was completely clear, but I was so detached from my body. Then I must have started to slip deeper because I remember I was in and out of consciousness, the doctor said, very like aware when I was awake, which that was the scary part, but when I would be unconscious and I started to slip deeper into this vegetative state or even into a coma at this point. I remember being surrounded by a peaceful darkness. So I don't remember seeing a light. I remember I was not scared at all. It felt like swaddled in darkness. Like I can't even really explain the peace I had. Like I said, I didn't see the light, but I felt the light. I felt the love. I was just completely at peace being in that darkness. And the next thing, I woke up to my entire family around my bed saying goodbye, like aunts, uncles, cousins, grandmothers. My grandfathers were passed by that point. I know they were there in spirit. My parents, my siblings, everybody saying goodbye to me. I already had my last rites at this point. And I woke up and I remember looking at everybody and I knew I'd be okay. Cause like I was perfectly clear in my mind. I just couldn't use my body or, verbalize anything. But I'm looking around and I'm like, why do they look so scared? I was confused. I'm like, I didn't know how I looked. I just knew I'd be okay. So I'm looking at all of them, I'm like, they look really scared. And I'm thinking to myself, it's okay, guys, I'm going to be okay. Like to comfort them, like telepathically, maybe energetically. I couldn't verbalize that, but I kept saying, I'm going to be okay, guys. I'm going to be okay. And I feel like part of the reason I came back was because I was afraid of what was going to happen if I didn't come back. Like, how would it impact my family? Yeah. At that point, I wanted everybody to be okay. It was okay. And I remember I was looking up in my hospital, the pole with the IV, and I'm like, what are they giving me? I just feel really tired. And they were not giving me anything sedative wise. It was just a regular, saline solution to hydrate. But it was just, I felt, I felt fine. Like, I don't even know how to explain it other than it was like that darkness. There was something about it. Like it was not, you would think it'd be scary.
Mhm.
You would think. I missed that darkness. Like
Right.
I black out my whole room and lay in my bed to be there again.
Right.
That's
Because it was
how
peace.
peaceful. Yes.
Yeah.
So, but I knew I had to come back. So I came back after waking up. Doctor said they did nothing to help me wake up. At that point, they basically threw in the towel. I had my last rites read to me already. Like they told me I feel like she was dying. I was slipping deeper. I know I was slipping deeper away because that's where I ended up in the dark, peaceful void. Like, and then I got sent back. And I mean, I made a full recovery. So I started, I had to work on talking again and walking again because this was a brain injury and usually you have to relearn stuff. But I remember being very intuitive, like just knowing what to do for myself. And even my father always said that you just know what to do for yourself. Right. So I just like, even to learn how to talk again, I would listen to music and try to keep up. Just there was inner guidance that I never thought twice about. I just listened to it.
Mhm.
I never had a name for it or anything. I just listened to it. So after that, I still had to go through you know, years of treatment. But after that, I went back to high school. I had an amazing time. Um, just embraced life.
Yeah.
Like I knew I dodged a huge bullet there, and you know, I was just happy to be able to walk and talk and communicate, and you know, my life could have been so different.
Right.
I could have been locked in my body right now,
Yeah.
like locked in, and that was horrifying. Horrifying. I'm going to say that because I mean, I was fully aware before, but I was so fully aware and then in my body, it's just trapped.
Yeah.
So, you know, I kind of once I got done with all of my treatments and everything, I just wanted to be a normal kid. I just want to be a normal teenager. Like, who wants to be weird? And well,
Right.
some people want to be weird, but like, I just wanted to fit in. Like, I never talked about my cancer or my treatments. I went back to school like nothing happened. So I kind of buried it because I wanted to have a normal life. And I did. I had an amazing time in high school, met amazing people. I've met so many amazing people that I'm so grateful for that, you know, either in high school, after high school, um, the people I have met, I feel guided to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I can see the reason we're in each other's lives. And like I said, these are things I can see and notice that like I never thought twice about. But, you know, it ultimately, I guess it was heightened intuition
Mhm.
because like the after effects of a near death experience, you have them even if you don't notice them.
Right.
Right. So it took me a while to like have words or even notice. I was like, oh, wow, I've been doing it a long time. That's weird.
Right. And
Yeah,
what really strikes me too is that it feels like even though you didn't have the whole angels and the,
right.
message, like the strong messages, that just being outside of your body, having the experience of being in that safe, peaceful place
Hmm.
sort of shifted it shifted your consciousness from your body
Right.
into a place of intuition that it sounds like in high school you weren't quite aware that that's what that was, that you would become spiritual in the
Right.
sense that you perceived things from a more spiritual perspective, or
Right.
felt that, uh, or were guided more by intuition than by external
Oh,
events
absolutely.
or people or that sort of thing.
And I would see synchronicities and stuff, and I would be like, I didn't know the word synchronicity yet, but when I would see the synchronicities, I knew I was on the right track.
Right.
I just knew that. I didn't have words for it. It just was like I might like, for instance, in my early 20s, which is this is a little weird because I actually forgot. I like buried my near death experience because of the trauma part, the childhood trauma. I buried it. So I was very disassociated with what happened. And that's what happens with childhood trauma. You bury
Right.
it so you can handle it, right? So that's spiritually, I think it's done spiritually like that, you know, so you can lead a normal life and then you have to deal with it eventually. So in my early 20s, I got a job working as a pathology assistant. I always want to be a crime scene investigator, but because I have like physical issues from the side effects of the chemotherapy, I can't um, be a detective. Like, I'd have to go through police
Mhm.
academy, and it's a lot of physical stuff I just
Yeah.
couldn't do. So I always like, oh, that's just so interesting to me, right? Then this job just drops in my lap. I get this job as a pathology assistant at a local hospital, and we assist the county medical examiner in autopsies. So I was an autopsy assistant for the county medical examiner for 5 years. So the way I knew I was in the right place is because I was Jen Dean, the Diener. Diener is the label for autopsy assistant. It's like
Oh.
DIE or DIENER. It's different spelling, same sound. So I was Jen Dean, the Diener. So I always looked at that like, well, I'm in the right place. But like,
Yeah.
it's odd because I didn't remember that I like almost died.
Hmm.
I think I blocked it, but I was so led to death.
Yeah.
And when I worked in that job, I thought it was going to be more of the physical side of things that were going to be rough. You know, all the blood. It's a gory job, but spiritually, I was so spiritually open in that job for that career with souls that were transitioning.
Yeah.
And usually these souls had traumatic deaths because medical examiner cases are homicides, overdoses, suicides, car crashes. Like typically the deaths that I would deal with were traumatic deaths. So the soul gets a little confused. And I never thought twice about feeling anything, or anybody who works with the dead can tell you, you can feel them there. Like funeral directors and stuff, they know. If you're working, there are times I had to be alone with the body to set up, clean up, get it ready for the funeral home. And those are the times I kind of just tapped in and was like, just go to the light. There's a beautiful place waiting for you. And I knew that from my own experience, because I'd never be able to do that job unless I had no fear of death, which is what I came out of my ND with. I was so full of life because I was like, I'm never gonna die.
Right.
That was my mentality. But like, yeah, your body dies, but I'm never gonna die, right? So
Yeah. And that's I wanted to kind of touch on that, because when you said that your near-death experience was more of just sort of a blackness, and it was a state of consciousness where nothing was happening, but you felt so great. That's what I really appreciate about it too, is that you didn't even have to see to know. And that's
right,
you
I
knew.
felt it, right. And I knew. And the funny part is when I came out of that, I have stronger clairsentience and claircognizance,
Right.
more than anything.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I came out of that with a stronger feeling, and like my feelings and my knowings, I always pay attention to. So it's interesting. Like I do have visions and stuff. Like it's just stronger with the feeling side of things. So I felt the love. I felt the light. Researching more into it, I feel like maybe I was just in the cosmic womb, just in suspended animation, and because it wasn't my time, even close to my time. So it was like I had a lot more work to do. And so, I was, it sounds funny, but like healed by the dark. I was rebirthed from it was an amazing experience. And you would think it would be kind of scary, but it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
And I know you had a story that you wanted to share about one of the experiences you had while working in that field, which I'd love to hear you share.
Yeah, definitely. So I was kind of still new to being a diener or an autopsy assistant. And we had one case with an older gentleman. He was in end stage cancer. He had end stage cancer, and he was terminal, and he could not take the pain anymore, and he ended his own life. And I remember it like it was yesterday. The body was on the table. Guy still had a pain patch on his arm, going through the cancer treatments. And I was a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor. I knew the pain that man went through. And trust me, at times you wish that you weren't alive because the pain is so overwhelming. You just want it to end. And so during an autopsy, I'd be the one doing the cutting and handing. The medical examiner would be next to me. This is the autopsy table. He'd be next to me. I'd do the cutting, take out the organs, hand them to the doctor. He'd gross. He'd take whatever gross means, like dissect, and he would take whatever he needed. There would be sheriffs there because these are medical examiner cases. So it's, an active investigation to find the cause of death. So any even unattended deaths, unless there's a doctor to sign off on the death certificate to say, yes, this person died from this, usually it's going to be an autopsy because they need to find a definitive cause of death. So there's sheriffs there, and I'm all suited up to do this. And I just connected so heavily with this soul. It bothered me to my core that he had to die like that. And I stuck my hand out. Sheriffs are watching me, doctor. I put my hand out and I put it on this man's arm. Just it just really shook me. And when I did that, I saw what he did. Like I got a flash of how he ended his life. And it did shake me. And my eyes started to fill with tears. And a sheriff came over and put his arm around me and whispered into my ear, "You need to detach from these cases or you're going to lose your mind." So right there, I said, okay, okay. So I pulled back. It shook me so much that in the end, like I ended up sticking myself, not with a syringe, but like a sewing needle. And I had to go for like HIV testing for a year because to make sure and nothing happened and I was fine and everything. But that's how much it shook me. Like I was, I just felt so bad that this man had to die that way. And I felt like he was like part of my soul group. I just met him afterwards. I feel his soul in me all the time. There have been times when I've been down to my darkest moments, and it's like he's there to remind me to like keep going, don't do what I did, keep going. Because I mean, in the end, suicides a lot of times, like afterwards, their soul is like, what have I done? But that's just the way this man, he was suffering. And it really affected me on like, he shouldn't have had to die like that alone and in that manner. And it really, really affected me. But I feel him with me all the time. Right. So I do believe it was part of my soul group that I met because, like I said, if I have fallen into like a deep depression, which I'll talk about more if you want.
Yeah.
And I did feel him there, just reminding me, like, don't, keep going. And just to remind me to really embrace life, embrace the journey. And, sometimes you got to fight through the darkness, but like, I feel him there. I really do. Like, it'll just come through as like a kind of like a memory from that point, but not so much the bad part of like, that was the thing is in my early 20s, I had no idea about mediumship or having visions or after effects and near death experiences. And when I put my hand on this man, that energy from what happened was still there.
Yeah.
And I saw it. And it just, that was the thing working in that type of field. You see a lot of rough stuff. So it was, I really appreciate that detective or that sheriff coming and kind of reminding me like, don't connect so heavily,
Yeah.
like taking me under his wing. Because after that, I really didn't, I tried to pull it back a bit. So it wasn't like, because it's a sad job, so you don't want to feel that all the time. So it does. And eventually you get to the point where you're doing an autopsy, talking about what you're going to meet for lunch afterwards.
Right.
It's kind of gross. You're so detached from what you're doing. But that case has some of the cases. There's a couple other cases that I'll never forget that have helped me through hard times. And I remember, it's almost like I want to learn the lesson for them so they didn't die in vain.
Right.
I'm learning it for you, so I feel like there's a little bit of there's a reason I'm there. There was an absolute reason I was there. And I always, no matter what, I never judged. Like I never had judgment against these people. I always looked at it like they're in a better place now. They're in a better place or they're on their way to a better place. As I've gotten older, I realized honestly, the soul is probably still in transition at that point because we would do these autopsies within the first 24 hours of death. And a lot of times with traumatic deaths, it takes the soul a minute to realize they're gone, they're dead. And then sometimes they might linger to make sure family's okay or, before they fully cross over. So I would just, send love and compassion and, just to set the energy for whatever their transition. So there was never judgment for these people. I just knew that obviously life is hard. Earth is rough. Like it is not an easy go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I never judged anyone, any of the souls. It was it was what it was, really. But some of the cases, that one case that just never left me. And
Right.
I think that there's a reason for that. And I truly do. I believe he's part of my soul group. I
Yeah.
just met him after the
Right.
fact.
That makes
So,
sense because he still has an impact on you now and have
right.
lessons to learn. And along the topic of sort of lessons, I think what is it that now you really want people to know to help them? I mean, this has been such a difficult time for everyone, specifically in the last 2 years, in the last few years for a lot of people. And like you said, we're here. This is Earth School. It's not meant to be easy. There
No.
are there is joy because we do need the contrast um,
Right.
to
Right.
appreciate when things are beautiful. And
Yes.
I've been there too. You were talking about going through a depression, and
Yep.
what I didn't say to you then, because I'm saying it to you now, is I went through years where I didn't want to live. I was
Yeah.
so much pain,
Yep.
emotional pain, and so much
Right.
emptiness several times in my life. And I always look back and think, I am so glad I stuck around. And I
Right.
stuck around for my family. And I stuck around
Yes.
out of fear of how would I even transition myself. But the
Right.
thing is that in the long run, it's because I didn't even know what was ahead. What I'm getting chills right
Right.
now. I have total spirit tingles right now.
Yeah.
There was so much more for me to do. And now
Yeah.
that I'm in
You
such
had a big purpose
a
still.
huge purpose, and now I'm like everything's so vibrant, even not having
Yes.
died,
Yeah.
having had that experience of not wanting to
Yes.
be here.
Right.
Now people would probably say I probably have a greater lust for life than most people
Right.
do. I
Right.
am the
Because
one
you
who's
went through
like,
that.
yeah, I just want to see everything and do
Well, it's like
everything.
a dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual awakening, and that's the message. Is a lot of people are going through this shift. Stick it out. It may get down to the point where, like I have been there too, and that was the thing. I got down to my darkest, deepest depression I've ever been in after losing a loved one, and I really same thing. I didn't want to live. At this point, I was in my 30s, like 33 or so, and I didn't want to live, but I had my family. I couldn't do that to my husband at the time. I really did stick it out, but it was just, I would sit outside under the night sky and just ask God, why the hell am I here?
Mhm.
Why am I here still and she's gone? Why not take me? And I made massive like survivor's guilt, which is something that comes along being a cancer survivor because you end up seeing a lot of your friends die and you live and you don't understand why am I here and they're not, you
Yeah.
know, and cancer survivorship's not easy. I have chronic pain every day. I have a lot of issues. I handle them well because I'm dealing with my whole life, but uh, so I was just confused,
Yeah.
and I started to lose my faith, and that's when I had a spiritual experience.
Yeah.
I ended up my friend who had passed away. I had like an out of body experience. I ended up in my I was laying on the couch. I passed out, or I don't know what happened, but I ended up in the kitchen with her. And I remember I'm thinking like, how are you here? I knew she was dead, and it was no verbal, just like what? And she was like an angel. She was glowing. Looking back, it was like the light dressed up as who I needed to see,
Mhm.
right? Or her soul, whatever. It was her. And the last time I saw her was in her coffin. So it was beautiful to see her as an angel. And she hugged me and um, said, thank you for everything you've done. And the next thing I know, I woke up on my couch. I felt this peaceful feeling come from through the top of my head, all the way through my body, out my feet. And I laid there crying because I knew I'd been hugged by an angel. And I felt so at peace. And I was like, that was a definite experience
Yep.
because I felt it. I didn't just see it. Well, after that, I pulled out of my deep, dark depression. Then I got pregnant with my son 2 months later. So I cry when I think back to that time. If I would have ended my life, I was 2 months from experiencing my heaven on earth. So, my message to everybody, stick it out. really get through that dark time however you can. And spirituality, like there's so many things you can do to try and help yourself out of that dark place. Um, and sometimes we do need to just sit in it,
Yeah.
feel it, and then release it. And then you're making way for the energy to come through to heal you. So that is like really, it was like I was hugged by the light.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got pregnant with no medical intervention with a kid that me and my husband at the time were trying for like 6 years.
Wow.
Just boom, pregnant. It was incredible. And then it was like I felt like it was a dream. And there was actually my intuition after that. I should mention this. My intuition started to really spike at this point. So before it was like, yeah, I noticed it and stuff like that. But like after I was hugged by the light, hugged by my friends, an angel, my spirit, my intuition was going crazy. Like I'd see synchronicities, numbers, all kinds of so much coming in at once. I was almost like, what the heck is happening? It's never been like that. I started to get feeling that I was pregnant. Now, I don't ignore my feelings. And I know there's something called phantom pregnancy. Well, you know what? I don't know. I don't ignore my feelings. So I even told my doctor, I was like, I feel pregnant, but nothing, I'm not getting positive results. And this was after I was hugged by the lights. Like I just felt it coming, right? But it wasn't there yet. And it sounds weird, but I have always been taught to embrace what I'm feeling. And to my core, I felt pregnant, but it wasn't coming up on a test. So at this time, I went to a couple doctors. I rheumatoid arthritis, and they give me like it's chemotherapy medication that they give to treat that. So two doctors were telling me, I don't know, just start taking the medication again, which is this medication you have to stop at least 6 months before even trying to have a baby because it kills quickly growing cells.
Yeah.
So it will either cause you to miscarry or you're gonna have a very deformed baby. Or it was like two different doctors telling me to take this med. And to my core, and I'm like, but if I feel pregnant, should I take that medicine? It didn't feel right. I was, no way, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
No way. And thank God, because like 2 or 3 months later, after they were telling me to take it, had I listened, I got pregnant. I just pulled out of a deep depression. Had I taken that medicine and I would have had to make a decision that I was not ready to make, it would have destroyed me.
Yeah.
Right. So at one point, the intuition got so strong. I had an ultrasound. I look up at the screen. There was a 20-week fetus. I look over at the tech and I see she's not seeing that. And I'm making sense. Like, there's no way I'm 20 weeks pregnant. So I'm like, oh shit, this is coming. This is coming to me. And I like didn't say anything because like I'll end up in a straitjacket. So I'm going to shut up and just roll with this. And I did. I ended up aligning my body to the visions and the feelings I was having. I started to eat right. I detoxed my body. I started to take prenatal vitamins. I started taking herbs. It was like after I was hugged by the light, it was a download of information on how to get to my son holistically. I can't even tell you the meditations, the visualizations, getting my my cycle in tune with the moon. It was just so much stuff that just came to me. And that is how I got pregnant with my son. So now, mind you, that for each person, to each their own. At that point, my body's been through so much with Western medicine. It was like almost like maybe the holistic side of things is a better shot of trying to get pregnant. But it was just I knew what to do to get to my son. And then when I got pregnant, it was after seeing a double rainbow on St. Paddy's Day, which I'm Irish and Scottish. All my grandparents are passed on. And I remember seeing the rainbow and I heard take the test. And I was like, I don't know if I want to take the test. Like, I feel like a crazy person. You know what I mean? I'm going to take a test. So it was like, no, take the test. So I took it and I got 2 pink lines. And I was like, oh my God, like after seeing a double rainbow on St. Paddy's Day, I feel like it was like my grandparents while they're welcoming me into my version of heaven on earth. God gave me it exactly when I needed it.
Yeah.
But to get there, I had to start remembering what I went through 20 years prior.
Hmm.
So, that was the thing. I had to start sifting through. Once I started losing my faith and this feeling came on, I started to kind of remember why I'm here and really fully remember what happened. I mean, I started talking to my parents about it and they were surprised because I never brought it up, but I'd always done well. You know, they were worried about me going into this depression. Everybody saw it, but it was it was just incredible to actually start remembering things. And my parents are there to confirm the things I'm remembering. But getting to my son, that was the ultimate goal in my entire existence. I just wanted to be a mother. That's it. That is my heaven on earth. Feeling life grow inside of me. I always was at war with my body because I have so many issues from the chemo and the side effects. And so my body's always giving me problems. But to like look at my kid now, that my body grew to perfection, it blows me away every time. To feel life grow inside me, it was incredible. It just gave me, it was like remembering my near death experience and what I had been through and, the bullet I dodged, and to be here and then be pregnant was incredible.
Yeah.
So, becoming a mother was my ultimate goal. I swear, I've like I feel like it feels like I've had many lifetimes, but I've never been a mother.
Mm.
Like I just have never actually had a child, and then this lifetime I finally achieved that. I had I have some traumatic past life memories.
Hmm.
So, I think maybe something happened before I ended up being able to have a baby. Um, so I think it's just like it just feels like I've come full circle in this life.
That's what's so beautiful, I think, about spirituality in general, is that once you start, I don't know, as you get, some people learn it younger, but I
Mhm.
think we start to see the patterns and synchronicities in our lives that led us to where we are. And it all makes sense. Now I
Yes.
can see, oh, and it's all these
Yeah.
callbacks to, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when that happened. And now it all came full circle. And it's so cool to see. I've
Yeah.
said it in another interview that I always now see how it's like God wrote this screenplay for my life. And I'm
Yes.
like, God, look what God did there. It's like I
Right.
see the connections and the synchronicities, and I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of NDEers take back with them is, um, no matter how far they went to the other whatever we call the other dimension, the other state of consciousness,
Right.
they all kind of, the common theme is coming back with a new awareness of who we really are, and
Right.
being more in touch with intuition, and being able
Yeah.
to understand our life paths and what we're here for. And hopefully,
Right.
by sharing your story and others like you sharing theirs, it's encouraging other people to just really be in tune with where they're being led. And
Yes. And
I
that's
think that's
important right now. There's a lot of such confusion in this ever since 2020.
yeah,
And I think as also the energy rises, we're going into a different energy field, like in the universe. We're going into a higher energy field. That's why we're rising our consciousness. People's intuitions might be getting louder right now. You might be seeing more synchronicities. You might actually start to see spirits
yep,
if you're a medium and you don't know it. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like there's a lot of mediums that are awakening to their gifts right now,
yeah,
right? So it's all about just, I think near death experiences are just trying to help people understand that like this is actually normal,
hmm,
like nothing to be afraid of. It's actually just energy. It's an
yep,
energy shift, just like death. Death is an energy shift. You go from one to the next. It's a birth. It's
yeah,
a death and then a rebirth to the next dimension. This is not it. It's actually a very short journey on earth to learn lessons, and it's not meant to be easy. um, but in the end, when you go through something, look back and what was the lesson you learned? Okay, that was the lesson. Okay, take that and leave the rest. Like
yeah,
because most of the times you learn the best lessons through going through the worst shit. So, I mean, the biggest lessons are going to be when your heart is shattered by something. And
Absolutely.
so, when you dive deep into that pain, you draw back your pieces and you become whole again and you shine a little brighter because you've been to the deepest, darkest place and now you are in the light again. Right. So that happens on earth too. It just happens in a different way. Um, because ultimately, like on earth, it's a little bit different than just being energy or spirit, you know?
Yeah, and I'd love to leave it there because I think you just ended it so beautifully. How it all comes first full circle, and really, I think that is the message. And I think it's
Yeah.
so beautiful to keep in mind that whenever you're going through the shit, just
Mhm.
remember that it doesn't. Yes,
Don't
recognize your
let it
grief.
consume
And
you.
yeah, I mean, feel your feelings, sit in grief,
Hmm.
allow yourself to cry and be angry, and that's okay.
Yes.
But
Yes.
like you
That is
said,
a big message too.
yeah,
Just as like a Reiki practitioner, I know there's a lot of positivity only type thing, like
toxic
just
positivity.
toxic, that is not good, because you block your energy fields. Like you mess up your chakras and you're not in alignment because things need to be felt and released. So you are open to the energies coming through the planet right now are very healing energies.
Yeah,
So we are all feeling it. This is why a lot of people have anxiety or you're feeling stuff a lot more in 2020 because it's a huge shift that we went through.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that's a good point to feel the shit and release it. Just feel it
yeah.
and let it go. Pick out the lesson from it and release it. That was my lesson, and it was a good one. Because usually the ones that break your heart are the ones that's a, what, in a way it's like it makes you stronger because you get through it,
Yeah.
and usually you have to be the one to get yourself through it. Obviously we have support systems, but ultimately we are the ones who get ourselves through it. But yeah, just remembering that, like, try not to get stuck there in
Yeah.
that darkness, because a lot of people are going through this process of death and rebirth.
Hmm.
So even if you're in the dark, you'll get to the light again. You will.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. I really
No
appreciate you being
problem.
here today and sharing your energy, your time, your insight. It's been such a
Anytime.
pleasure.
Yes, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.